This is the east side of the High Street shown in green. And we start with the current post office. It's located at the beginning of Ardmore Road and was previously used by the Grattage family, who were plumbers, and the location at that time was known as the High Street, as appears on this advertisement. And before Grattage, it was used by the Cotton family, also plumbers. The labour charge on this receipt from 1929 was 1 6 an hour, equivalent to just 7.5 new pence. And this is a manhole cover with Cotton's name. However, in the mid-1800s, this area was the yard, house and shop of the Grosvenor family, who were wheelwrights for at least 2 generations. And it's probably the reason why the junction of the High Street, Ardmore Road and Selma Street has been known to some residents as Grosvenor Corner or Grosvenor Square. The off-licence was a general shop run by the Tisdale family. They also repaired bicycles and motor vehicles at the rear of the premises, and the family had a band which played at local village hall dances. Next to Tisdale's were these 3 terrace cottages, which were demolished in the 1960s and replaced by single-storey retail units. Further up was the Duke's Head, which was a public house from at least 1834 until 1940. And this is a 1-pint measuring jug. Samuel John Whitehouse was the licensee from the census records in 1891 and 1901. Since it's closed, it's been used as a post office, an electrical store, a pet shop, and it's now a private residence. Next to the Duke's Head is a large property which is currently a catering business. Since the 1980s, the property has been connected with catering. But these premises were used as a grocery store from as early as 1861 and incorporated a post office for some 30 years. Joseph Walwyn and his son Walter, bakers and grocers from Coton Mill at the other end of the village, owned the property at one stage, and Percy Evans, seen here, was their manager in 1935. And around about 1950, the property changed hands and became Richardson and Jones, and continued to trade as a greengrocer's and grocery store. This was later sold to Charlie Talbot, who also ran his milk delivery business from the rear of these premises. Adjacent to this building was a cottage, not very visible but highlighted on these pictures. It was demolished in the early 1950s to provide access to the rear of the adjoining properties. The large White House, shown on the right of this picture, stands in a commanding position, overlooking the stretch of the High Street down to the mini roundabout. The buildings were used for many years in the early to mid-1900s as the doctor's surgery for Dr. Davis, Dr. Hill and Dr. Wassell. The property occupies a corner position with a short cul-de-sac which provides vehicle access to St. Lawrence's Church. It's now part of the High Street, but is indicated on census records as being called Church Street. And this is a map as seen from St. Lawrence's Church Tower. And this is a view of the street taken from St. Lawrence's Church Tower in 1988. The property highlighted on the left is the Church Institute and was probably the first free school. The parochial school was built in 1875 and at that time was the main source of education in the village, apart from a few private schools. The building, with about 80 pupils during the 1880s, had an infant's room and 3 other classrooms. School leaving age at the time was 13. It was built on the site of the workhouse shown here in 1840 and was attached to the end of this terrace as highlighted here in blue. This bay-fronted property was Daniel Meadows' butcher's shop in the late 1800s. The school records indicate that there were constant complaints by the schoolmaster about the smell from these premises. These premises have been used by Barclays Bank and then as a chemist's, but it was a chemist shop in the 1800s according to census records. In 1881, William Duncalf was a chemist, druggist and wine and spirit merchant, and before him Percival Smith was a druggist here. This property has been a grocer's shop for many years. Samuel Addison from Eccleshall ran the business from 1880 for at least 32 years. And this is a token issued by him. It's about the size of a 20-pence piece, but its purpose is unknown. In 1932, Thomas Campion was the grocer. Then the business passed to Mr. Randall, who was killed in a woodwork lesson at an evening class at the school in October 1951. His widow continued to run the business for the next few years. And about 1956, Thomas Ball bought the shop. Many years previously, he'd worked on these premises for Samuel Addison. The entrance to the shop was the doorway on the left of this picture, and the door closest to was to the house. This is an aerial view of the High Street from the 1960s. The Grosvenor Centre, then a school, is at the top of the picture. This is the shop and living accommodation, and there was a small yard at the rear. And this picture shows that the shop has expanded into the living space. The building attached to the shop was used as a workshop for mending bicycles by George Allsop. He had a shop in the front room of the house on the other side of the yard, shown here in yellow. And this is the location of the house. It was owned by Dick Hall. He was a blacksmith operating from these premises at the rear of the shop. In 1970, Dick Hall's house, the smithy and George Allsop's workshop were demolished. The shop was extended and a row of 4 houses was built away from the shop, allowing for a larger car park. At the bottom of the High Street, by the mini island, are the almshouses, one of which was used at the start of the 1900s as the police station. And this is the photograph of the local bobby.